Hello, everyone. Welcome to a chat with Beyond Type 2. I'm Tiara, and I'm the Senior Project Manager of Beyond Type 2. Beyond Type 2 is a resource website for people living with type 2 diabetes or impacted by type 2 diabetes. We share resources on articles such as diabetes management, food, exercise, medications, whatever you're looking for, you can find it at beyondtype2.org. And today I am joined by two amazing guests to talk about hypoglycemia for people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And I'm joined by Taylor Danielle and Ginger Vieira. At her core, Taylor Danielle likes to think of herself as a creative force trying to make her own space to exist. From diabetes health and awareness with her podcast, Healing in Hindsight, to being your unapologetic self with her live stream show, Is There Room for Me? She is your tough love soundboard and motivation bestie. So definitely go and follow Taylor on social media. Her social links will be in the description box. And if you really love this conversation, especially with Taylor, check her out on Beyond Type 1 soon. And we also have Ginger Vieira. And Ginger has lived with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years and a few other autoimmune diseases too. She writes books and articles on living with diabetes, including dealing with diabetes burnout, emotional eating with diabetes, and pregnancy with type 1 diabetes. Ginger lives in Vermont with her two daughters, a handsome fella, and her dog, Petey. And also, Ginger is one of my amazing colleagues here at Beyond Type 1, Beyond Type 2. So, ladies, thank you for joining me today. How are you? How you guys doing?
Great. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Awesome. So obviously both of you guys are here to talk about hypoglycemia. We know that hypoglycemia is an issue. I think for people with type 2 diabetes, for people with type 2 diabetes specifically, we focus a lot on high blood sugar, but the purposes of this conversation is to talk about your unique experiences. Taylor, you living with type 2 diabetes, Ginger, you living with type 1 diabetes, and how you both were educated about that. So I'm going to open it up to both of you. It doesn't matter which one of you wants to start, but would you mind sharing your personal experiences with low blood sugar?
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't mind starting.
Okay.
Um, Actually, that's actually how I discovered my diagnosis, amongst other symptoms. I was fainting. Um, and so it took one good time in the shower and a nice little bump to the head. That was like the final straw of like, I should go see a doctor about this because I tried to see one before. Both of my parents are also type 2, to check on that because I figured there might be a genetic aspect to it as well, but I was fine. So when I started experiencing the symptoms, the dry, sticky mouth, all that kind of stuff like that, the fainting spells were kind of the big signifier. And I didn't realize it. I was aware of the terminology because of my parents, but I never had to personally think about that until it was me. And so that was probably the scariest moment with that. More recently, I've joined the CGM crew. I feel really special having one now. And I
What do you have?
experienced I have the Freestyle Libre 2.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that one's really cool. And I went through like 2 weeks, my first sensor of a lot of lows. And I don't know if it's because I could actually see what was going on versus doing the finger prick and like guessing and like not knowing why I'm not during the day. But I started experiencing, kind of a little bit of the dot phenomenon, like where I was dropping really low around 2, 3 in the morning, and I'm waking up in the middle of the night, like, why am I starving? And also my alarm is going off. I'm like, oh, I get it now. So it's definitely been interesting, and it's nerve wracking when you don't know about it. And I've recognized moments where like even before being diagnosed, I'm like I was experiencing low blood sugar and I had no idea. So it's definitely been interesting.
Mm.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. That's certainly a way to be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I think it makes me wonder how many others with type 2 have been diagnosed in a similar way. I think we hear a lot of the opposite. Like, they had all of the classic symptoms, but yours was like, I had a severe low blood sugar. Gosh. Mm.
I know a woman who was diagnosed with type 2 because she trained diabetes alert dogs to detect low blood sugar. And the dog that she was using to teach the class kept alerting her. And she was like, what's going on? This dog is broken. I don't have diabetes. And it turned out she was low, and that led to her eventually being diagnosed with type 2. So I think there isn't enough talking about the fact that type 2s do have lows, and you weren't on insulin when you were going low. This was before you were even diagnosed, right? So like that's definitely a really huge thing that's not known, I think.
Wow. We also need to talk to that dog trainer, because that's
I
super
got two.
interesting. So Ginger, what about your experiences?
So I've been type 1 since I was 13, and I certainly had lows as a teenager, but my blood sugar management wasn't I wasn't paying as much attention to it. And I don't remember having as many lows, maybe because my blood sugars were definitely running a little higher as a teenager, right? Than where I try to keep them now. But I've had a few scary lows. Really only one where I passed out. I've never had a seizure from a low, and I've never needed someone else to give me emergency glucagon, but I have used it on myself. Like when I was 8.5 months pregnant, and I had norovirus, and I didn't know it, but I had gotten it from Christmas dinner with this giant group of people, and started puking nonstop, and had taken all this insulin for all the Christmas dinner I just ate that was still being digested. Well, no, it wasn't being digested. I was puking it, right? So it was really helpful to have emergency glucagon for that, because I knew that I had all this insulin in my bloodstream for food that was no longer being digested. My other probably most scary low was when I was still learning how to juggle training in powerlifting and managing my insulin doses. And I forgot to cut my insulin dose in half for the meal that I ate after my powerlifting workout. And I just like suddenly was like, and then I crawled. I fortunately lived in like a box for an apartment. I was in my early 20s, and I crawled from my bedroom to my kitchen, where I grabbed a thing of dry oatmeal off the counter and poured it in my mouth, and then passed out in the carpet. And I woke up a half hour later, and my blood sugar had come up because of the oatmeal. And I'm sure my liver also helped out. But like those are the most dramatic lows that I've had. And that's what I think what people who don't have diabetes think about as like what a low blood sugar is. But anyone on insulin, and apparently anyone in other stages of living with type 2 diabetes too, can experience, like it's, you don't want to have them all the time, but like we experience minor lows all the time because we're trying to stay in that healthy range.
Right. And so Taylor, are you on insulin now?
No, I'm medication based. I do take a shot, but it's not insulin. It's like the Ozempic pen. So it does. Yeah. But I don't. I'm mainly oral medication based.
And let's talk a little bit more about treating low blood sugar. Ginger, you mentioned a glucagon kit, and right shortly before we were recording, we were kind of getting a little bit into this, but we mentioned things like Gvoke, Baqsimi, other traditional glucagon kits. Can you both talk about the education you did or did not receive about low blood sugar?
This will probably give you a clue, but no idea what you just listed off, because my understanding was drink some juice, or some type of sugary drink. Maybe if you're not at I call them the shakes, but maybe if you're not at that point,
Right.
where you can really feel it, I get hot and sweaty, all that stuff like that, try to eat something. I usually now I keep like the go packs of applesauce, because it's almost like I'm half drinking it in a way, and can still get into my system a little bit faster than having to go through the entire digestive process. But that's what I knew. And anything, even when I was first diagnosed, like the only thing that we talked about is, here's some metformin, you're young, this will probably be all that you need, cool, here's a pamphlet, go home. And even now, with my I've just now started seeing an endocrinologist. I didn't know I was supposed to. My primary has always been the one helping me to treat. But even then, there was nothing like, hey, you should probably keep this on hand. I've just learned from being honestly in the community and spending more time with, those who are insulin dependent, and understanding like, okay, there's not much of a choice in this realm. So I also need to be cognizant of that for myself, because sometimes I do get in those spaces where I don't think about it because all I'm doing is popping a pill, and
Right.
so
Right.
it has made me a lot more sensitive and more empathetic and aware
Yeah.
that I should probably know these things, because it truly could mean my life if I
Yes.
don't, keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Ginger, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think doctors are good about making sure type 1s have the old school emergency glucagon kit, that's like very complicated and expires after a year. And if you don't know that, then you've got one that's like 5 years old. But you have to mix these two things. And then it comes with this needle that's like humongous. And the whole benefit of these newer emergency glucagon kits that you mentioned, Baqsimi and Gvoke, is that you don't have to mix anything, and they don't have to live in, you don't have to mix anything, and they don't have to come with this giant syringe, which is really intimidating for the people that are administering it for you. And I have Baqsimi, but my doctor never mentioned it. I had to ask for the prescription, and fortunately I didn't get any like arguing of like, what's that? Why do you need that?
Right.
I don't think enough doctors know about these newer, better types of emergency glucagon.
Yeah, yeah, and for the audience and also for Taylor as well, Baqsimi is an emergency treatment for severe low blood sugar. So typically, if your blood sugar drops below 54, that constitutes like as an emergency, and it's a dry nasal spray. So let's say Taylor, Ginger, or one of you is like passed out. I could spray that into your nose, and you don't need to be conscious to for it to start working. Once I just spray it into your nose, it starts working, starts bringing your blood sugars back up. And that way, that gives us time to make sure that you go see a doctor, to make sure that you're not experiencing any other kind of consequences from severe low blood sugar. And I think especially in the type 2 community, there isn't enough discussion about why low blood sugar is so dangerous. Like, Taylor, you mentioned how you woke up 2 or 3 in the morning wondering why you're starving. But one of the and Taylor, just if you feel comfortable, do you live like alone do you live by
Yeah.
yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my partner has access to my place, but he wouldn't know. And
Right.
because I have the sensor too, I don't have a way to put it on his phone to like alert him to like, hey, just a heads up, something's going on. So there's even that aspect of like, the dogs aren't coming to save me if
Yeah.
anything goes down, So I have to be really aware of that kind of stuff.
Right. Because your blood sugar could drop low and you could fall into a coma. Something serious could really happen to you. So it really is important to make sure that you are treating yourselves, especially if you're living alone. I know I live alone, so I feel for as well when my blood sugar drops too low at night. And I wear the same CGM that you do, Taylor. So I understand your experiences wholeheartedly. Um,
Yeah, and
but
like,
yeah,
well, and that just kind of reminds me of like Baqsimi originally is thought of as like someone's using it on you if you're having a seizure and you can't eat. But let's say you live alone, I would keep Baqsimi in my nightstand so that if I woke up during a severe low, and like the idea of trying to chew or get to the kitchen
yeah,
is not possible. If I could at least just reach the Baqsimi and give that to myself, I could save my life or prevent seizures and hours of lying in bed seizing.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yep, exactly. And we've run a couple of stories on this product. It's also called like nasal glucagon, Taylor. And a couple of other people with type 2 who have it have said like they like it because if they're having a moment when you're super low, it's probably really dangerous for you to try to drink or even chew anything. So which is why it's a safer option than something just like juice or something. But let's talk more about like your support systems. So Taylor, you mentioned your partner. Ginger, you said that you're living with a handsome fella. Do you how do you prepare him for low blood sugar episodes? Do your daughters also know what to do?
I wouldn't say my daughters know what to do as much as they know that when I say mommy is low, I need some space. I'm not getting anybody cookies or whatever. We're not setting up like a crazy game of hide and seek right now. I need everybody to just go play with their Barbies and give me a minute. My boyfriend actually recently, I was having a low in the middle of the night and I was sweating, and I know exactly why I was having such a severe low. I had tried to guess randomly how much insulin to take for pizza, and I guessed wrong. And I got way more insulin than I needed. And I was it was during the summer actually, so this was last summer, and the room was really cold, but I was sweating like crazy. And he woke up and was like, something is not right, you need to check your blood sugar. And I was like, I'm fine, Carl, there's nothing we can do about it. And I just kept telling him, there's nothing we can do about it, it just sucks. And I said it like 5 times, and he's like, wake up. He turned on the light and made me wake up, and I checked my blood sugar, obviously extremely low. I started eating Skittles, but I was still like, I think that's enough Skittles, Carl, I'm fine. And he's like, you were gonna eat those Skittles until you realize how cold it is in this room, because I had pushed all the covers off of me, and the room was like really cool. And so he made me eat Skittles until my body temperature came back up. And yeah, so that was amusing for me later and annoying for him because he had to do so much work to get me to cooperate.
Wow. Taylor, have you and your partner experienced something similar? What does your partner do? Or does your partner know what to do if you drop low?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of lucky in a way that he was a medic in the military, so he had to become familiar because when they would do drills, that was something that he had to kind of keep eyes out for. But it's still different, when you're out in the field, versus at home. And so before I got a CGM, he was around when I was experiencing a couple of lows, but I was able to still communicate that. I was just like, I need to sit down. Can you get me something out of the fridge? Like I need a sip or something. And so he's always been calm in that instance, but he actually took over my show recently. And we talked about that, about like his experience of witnessing those moments. And then now having a CGM, like I had to warn him. I was like, hey, just so you know, like around 2, 3 in the morning, sometimes my CGM goes off. So don't freak out. I'll try to I'll keep it on vibrate or something so it doesn't wake you up. And the first few times that he experienced that, he was like, he thought it meant I needed to check. He thought it was an alert. You check my blood sugar. And he's like, it just went off. Wait a minute. It's like, no, that's telling me that I'm either too low or too high. So it's definitely been interesting. And I'm glad that he knows what to do. Even my parents, they know what to do because they have the same, similar experiences. But I've kind of just taken it upon myself to try to prepare as much as I can so I don't put myself in a position. But anytime that I've been out with friends, I do have a lot of nurse friends. So, and they're aware, that I am diabetic. So sometimes when I'm like, I'm going to hang back, I'll meet you guys at the next spot, they kind of know that that's the cue of like, I'm taking a second to make sure I'm okay. But it was definitely interesting with him because he just was like just ready to spring into action. Do I need to do something? But the CGM was probably the funnier instance because he just was like, why is it going off all the time? Like, I'm actually learning what my body is doing during the day.
Yeah.
I had a Libre. My boyfriend liked when I was using the Libre because he loved scanning my arm while I was asleep to make sure I was fine.
That's awesome for both of you. And so I guess as we begin to wrap up, I would love for you both to talk about prevention and preparedness. So what do you both do with respect to your medications? Taylor, you with Ozempic and your GLP-1, Ginger with your insulin. How do you both prepare or try to prevent low blood sugars?
Keep snacks everywhere. I have snacks like gummy snacks in my glove box. I didn't actually intend for it to be the candy that it is. It's the Sugar Fina. They have the little alcohol themed gummies. They're normally for weddings and stuff like that. And my friend used to be a wedding photographer, so I knew of it because she would always bring back some from weddings and they were so tasty. And so I was picking up, some wine from, it was either Total Wine, I think it was, and they have the little boxes. And I realized I was out of snacks in my glove box that weren't going to melt. So I grabbed one because it's in this little acrylic box and it's just sitting right in the center of my glove box. And, as long as I'm in my car, I'm good. But now I also make sure that I pack my my clutches or my purses or whatever to try to have something. Or if we're out and I know that like we're going to be close to food or something like that, I always grab something. But the best way that I prepare is just knowing what's going on ahead of time. My friends don't get annoyed now when I'm like, where are we meeting to eat? Because I can, preview the menu, I can understand what we're doing for the day, and then I can pack accordingly. And if my partner is wearing his cargo pants, I'm using all the pockets.
Ginger?
I mean, in addition to everything she said about glove compartment, nightstand, I always wear this little purse that when I'm walking my dog that has gummies in it. But I also try to, because of how insulin works and it stays in your system for 3 to 4 hours, I try to time my exercise, including dog walks, that can burn down blood sugar just as much as going for a jog, for either before eating, if I know it's been at least 3 to 4 hours since I last took fast acting insulin, or right after eating, and then cut my insulin dose I cut it by at least half. And obviously talk to your healthcare team. This is what works for my body. But sometimes I need to cut it down by like 75%, depending on the type of exercise I'm going to do. But what really does work really well for me is to exercise before a meal so that I don't have a big bolus of fast acting insulin in my bloodstream. And that is what I do the most.
Nice. Well, thank you both for this amazing conversation. I am glad that both of you were able to join me today to talk about hypoglycemia, especially in the type 1 and type 2 communities. Will you both mind telling the audience where they can get in touch with you or learn more about you? Taylor, let's start with you.
Oh, okay. So I'm slightly obnoxious, so I have 2 places. So if you want to hear more about my podcast, which has my journey as a type 2 diabetic and then connecting with other allies and other diabetics, that's going to be on Instagram at Healing in Hindsight. And then if you want to keep up with me personally, it's going to be at Just Taylor Daniele, and that's Danielle with 1 L, Daniele.
Ginger?
I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Amazon as Ginger Vieira, Vieira.
All right. And both of their social links will be in the description, as well as resources about living with type 2 diabetes and hypoglycemia awareness in type 2 diabetes. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this conversation today. Please talk to your healthcare provider about what you should do to prevent or prepare or even treat low blood sugars. But if you want more resources on living with type 2 diabetes, please go to beyondtype2.org, and we will see you next time. Bye.